Catherine Delahunty, order! Order! I call Catherine Delahunty.
Thank you, Mr Speaker.
5-minute call.
Te whare nui. Thank you, Mr Speaker. Before I talk about some of the aspects of the bill in the second reading in terms of human rights and civil liberties, because human rights is my portfolio, I want to ask some questions. And I think they're questions that the reason why the Green Party is not supporting the bill is because the questions have not been answered to our satisfaction. I recognise there's been work done and answers given, but they're not to our satisfaction at this stage. The first one is there an immediate threat? I think it's hard to argue that the world is safe or has been safe for a very, very long time. And in fact, ever since September 11 and our participation in the Afghani issue, our country has been unsafe to some degree, but not to a very high degree. And I think it's hard to argue that we are more unsafe than we've been for quite a while. We have sided with the Five Eyes in various wars, either directly or indirectly, which have created a level of risk. And that's a choice that has been made by governments, not by the Green Party. But we are yet to be convinced that there was an immediate threat. That means that rather than wait till June 2015 for a full security review, it was necessary to introduce this under urgency. And I'll talk about the process for the public in a minute. Do we have police powers already to address serious criminal acts? Yes, we do. That's my understanding. We really do. Is the SIS neutral? And have we forgotten what happened the very day this bill was introduced in terms of the SIS's relationship with abuse of power and lack of neutrality? Many people in the public have not forgotten, and the Green Party has not forgotten. How do we actually stop recruitment to terrorism? Through more violence and surveillance, or by an investment in communities where that risk could possibly arise? How do we support the Muslim community, for example, because this bill is much broader than that, to be treated with respect and to assist them to be part of a process of de-radicalising people who might be at risk? Why can't we wait till next year? What also is the definition of extremist? So there's a considerable debate about the word extremist, the word terrorist, and what that actually means, and where does that sit? We have to know what those things are before we can possibly vote for this, because warrantless surveillance, visual surveillance, etc., are all serious issues for people who could be categorised as terrorist or extremist and whose actions have been associated with guerrilla warfare, liberation struggles, or even non-violent action in this country. What was once a small but progressive country making a huge global contribution could now possibly be one of the most conservative in this regard, particularly in the way in which this bill has been forced through. So I just want to talk a little bit about the 525 or more submissions, and also the many people who couldn't submit because they didn't even know that there was only 2 days available. And I want to pay credit to them, total credit, to the Kiwi citizens who actually showed the government up and made it thoughtful and informed, committed submissions on this issue. And I acknowledge that the Select Committee did a huge amount of work to hear them, and I support every word of my colleague, Dr. Kennedy Graham, who talked about this process. I'd like to thank the civil liberties and human rights groups. Many thanks to the submitters from Muslim New Zealanders for their vital reminder to the Select Committee about the impact of this legislation, including the increase in personal abuse since the Prime Minister started justifying this extension of spy powers and creating more fear and more paranoia towards Muslim communities. The modifications of this bill were predictable. There is more oversight of the SIS, which is a good thing, and the change to the video surveillance timeframe, the video surveillance and the timeframe without a warrant, was a predictable change. It was always built in that the government could gain the Labour Party's support by backing off on those issues. That was entirely to be predicted. But actually, it doesn't make much difference. 24 or 48, no warrant is still an unacceptable trade-off, which we cannot live with. But the biggest problem we have in the Green Party is this bill's rationale and the slim, barely explained urgency that is forcing it through this House. Why have we rushed to push the panic button? Who is telling us we must do this? If we are so concerned about foreign fighters, why does the bill create broad powers? From where we sit, this looks like broad powers to allow for some giant fishing expeditions, for some fish that may be very, very small or very, very large, but who will not have the basic rights that citizens of this country ought to have and will be subjected to surveillance. I want to quote just briefly from Amnesty's submission.
I'm sorry to
in my
interrupt the
next
member.
call.
Her time has expired.